All right, hello everyone again, and welcome back to my channel, Restaurant and Research. Today's discussion will be somewhat motivated by the man who wrote this book, or helped write this book, Ferran Adrià, and his endless dedication in the field of curiosity and innovation and research has got me researching some of these things for myself, and hopefully you guys find them valuable as well. Okay, well, before we open a restaurant, here's a bit of my thought pattern. I would like to know, and in as much detail as possible, what is a restaurant? So I've done a little bit of digging and this little bit of history of the restaurants and how they came to be. So the most loose definition I could come up with would sound something like a place, usually a building, as a structure that serves food, sometimes with wine and other beverages. There may or may not have menus. So that includes a broad range of establishments, I think. So, and this is my starting point. It definitely may change, especially as we dig ever deeper into this quest. Okay, so now a little bit of history. First public eating establishment, similar to a restaurant, is mentioned in 512 BC. It's a record from ancient Egypt, and it served only one dish: a bowl of cereal, wildfowl, and onions. So only served one dish made of 3 ingredients. So, okay, let's break that down. And this was a quote from Wikipedia. So here's some of my comments. The very first known restaurant to man was only serving one dish, and that's not that far away from some of the business practices that we see today. There are restaurants that serve only one dish. When this record is mentioned in 512 BC, that's a gap of about 2,500 years between then and present day. Is that a lot or a little? Well, for reference, the other reading materials that I'm sourcing say that human history dates back to around 50,000 years. That's when we left the continent we know now as Africa and started to explore and sort of settle around the earth. So certainly humans lived on before then, but some of the earliest indicators of our existence go back to 50,000 years, and the modern day restaurant has only existed for 2,500 years. I think that's a very small gap. I think we're just getting started, truly. Some of the other notes I have here. Some current business models evolve on this model 2,500 years later. They might offer one dish plus 2 or 3 options. They might serve a porchetta sandwich and allow you to put a piece of roast chicken on instead if you don't fancy pork. So that's a pretty neat idea. Sandwich shop, don't like pork, here's chicken, see ya, one dish. There are still similar places that only serve one dish. An ice cream parlor, for example, really that could be looked at as a single technique restaurant, right? All they sort of do is churn ice cream, or churn sorbetto, and they supplement that one technique with offering maybe 50 flavors, a cone and some sprinkles. So again, a variation, but I think we could still call that a one dish restaurant or an establishment. And then a steakhouse. Now forgive me, I'm gonna butcher this. Steakhouse called Le Race de Venise. God, that sounded bad. Which is known for serving steak frites and only asking you one question when you enter the restaurant: how would you like your steak done? Pretty neat. So that's sort of one thing I got away from that is you can pick a dish that's internationally known and highly valued by those who love that dish and want to see nothing else and proceed with that. But of course, there's only so many internationally known dishes that are highly valued. Okay, so a question to ask out of all of this. The first restaurant is about 2,500 years old, only served one dish. The question that popped into my head as I've immediately read this, how important are the options? We're going a little bit further. A forerunner of a modern restaurant is a thermopolium, an establishment in ancient Greece and ancient Rome that served ready-to-eat food and beverages. These establishments were somewhat similar in function to the modern fast food restaurants. They were most often frequented by people who lacked private kitchens. In Roman Empire, they were popular among the residents of insulae, a type of neighborhood. 158 AD, I presume? Didn't specify. Thermopolia with service counters have been identified throughout the town. And of course, the Pompeii is the famous town that got buried under meters and meters worth of ash and was somewhat preserved. So they're able to dig things up and discover these kitchens, thermopolias, counters, almost with service counters. They have been identified throughout the town. They were concentrated along the main axes of town and public spaces where they were frequented by the locals. So again, let's break this down. So we're getting closer, 1,850 years. That's a good chunk of time, but that's not a lot. That's very young. If we zoom out and look at it, another note: ancient Rome existed from about 753 BC to about 476 AD, roughly, for information. And then we see first evidence of ready-to-eat food sold to people who do not have access to the kitchen. That means lower class, maybe slaves, maybe foreigners, some sort of freedman, and they offer food to those who have very few other options. And these kitchens tend to be located in fire-prone and disease-rife parts of town. These sort of, they're lower class, if not the lowest. And I can only imagine that kings and rulers of these towns have their own set of chefs, their own set of cooks, who never went down. So truly, the first restaurant seemed to serve the travelers and those who simply could not afford to put a kitchen in their tiny home. We're just getting started in this business of restaurants. It's pretty neat to see some of the similarities, as we've learned that some of the first restaurants serve one dish. That is still common, although there are a lot of restaurants that serve a menu, which as we'll continue doing this research, we'll find out that menus in the restaurants became a thing about roughly about 1,000 years ago, let's say 900 years ago, where you sit down and it truly looks something similar to what we know now. But going back as far as 2,500 years ago, we see eating establishments that serve food, and then we go get a little bit closer and start talking about ancient Rome, and we see kitchens that cook and serve the lower socioeconomic class of people. So that's interesting. It's almost, yeah, as it says here, it's almost similar to a function of modern fast food. You don't have any other options. You want to eat to survive, and so you go to these trempoliums in ancient Rome and Greece. And I can only imagine that you would get served by people similar to your level. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm still learning about the whole YouTube thing and how to wrap things up. But this is very interesting. A lot of this sort of research has been motivated by looking and reading some of the El Bulli stuff and just watching Farhan look at the world slightly different than the rest of us. And me as a future chef owner, I find this kind of information, it's valuable. It gives you a backbone and helps you see where we came from, where we are now. Okay guys, thank you for watching. In the next video we're gonna dive a little bit deeper and talk about some of the older restaurants that have existed, but we'll be talking everywhere from ancient Rome to about maybe 19th, 18th century. So we'll catch up there, and then we'll move on to the modern restaurants. So thank you.